highlighted. So take note in case you find others in future. So then, what is macroeconomics? All right, I believe you're all following me and we're making sense. We're making sense. So macroeconomics has to do with three key words in red. The first thing is there's an economy. What is an economy? To keep it simple again, economy is the wealth and resources of a country. Full stop. It broadly the wealth and resources. Now, there could be additional things to that, but generally it has to do with that. E.g., all the goods and services produced or the population per time. Population is a resource. What are indicators, right? Indicators are signs and tools for measurements. So in other words, economic indicators are used to measure various parts of the economy. So remember I said, economy is the measure of wealth and resources. So if I will ask you on this call, Sweden and Nigeria, who is richer? Let's bring it home. You're dating two guys, and for some reason you've decided that the last decision you will use to determine who you're going to marry is, I'm talking to a lady now, is who is richer or who has a better prospect in the future. You need to measure that indicator. So you need an indicator to determine, okay, who is richer or wealthier, and on basis of that, make my decision. So what will you use? Would you say his salary? Would you say where he works? Would you say all of the above? That's what an indicator does. And I use this weird example so that you would not forget and you would always remember, all right? So indicators are tools for measurement. Please, this is important, and I know I'm not ready to say this yet. Indicators are not the causes themselves. And I think we need to understand that, and I'm sure we will. So they measure various parts. That means there's quite a significant amount of indicators that do exist, if I would put it that way. All right. Now, the last point is, the world has defined some generally accepted macroeconomic indicators. So, and that's why we hear, and that's what we hear in the news. And that's why I'm also here to tell us about what the world prioritizes as macroeconomic indicators. I believe you're following me. Macroeconomy has to do with how all of us are affected. So some context you should have in tracking macroeconomic indicators. Please, ladies and gentlemen, don't lose me. All right? I'm sure you're following my chain of thought. For those of you who joined, we started and we're still defining macroeconomics, okay? And I'm trying to give you, I've defined it. I said it's how all of us are affected. So if Nigerians are jackpotting too much, it's a macroeconomic problem. Insecurity is a macroeconomic problem because it deals with all of us, right? Our population is a macroeconomic conversation. Our GDP, fine, and so on and so forth. Now, some context you should have in tracking macroeconomic indicators. Number one, the type of economy. Macroeconomic indicators in advanced economies are the priorities they put are different from the priorities that we put in emerging economies or developing economies. Okay, emerging economies like Turkey, they're called emerging economies. Nigeria, I haven't checked lately, but I think sometimes we're referred to as emerging, depending on what context. But generally, we consider ourselves as developing, even though they say we should have outgrown that. And I'll check. You can also do that research. Secondly, the institutions tracking the macroeconomic indicators. So the most popular are IMF, the World Bank. I use IMF a lot in my own research. Then we have local ones like Central Bank, Nigeria Bureau of Statistics, Budget Office, which most times they share depending on what. I don't expect the Budget Office to mention anything physical, so anything monetary without talking to the Central Bank or pulling from Central Bank figures, because Central Bank is in charge of monetary, if you remember, while Budget Office is in charge of revenue and collection. Well, not Budget Office, sorry, Ministry of Finance, which is responsible for revenue and spending. So for those of you who just came in, fiscal is government spending, how government spends money. Monetary is how this government regulates the supply of money, because money is important. The third part of our context is scale or reach. There is global, there is regional, and there's country conversations around macroeconomics. Please pay attention to that. If there's a regional problem or a regional opportunity, just like the AFTA, African Free Trade Agreement, that is a regional conversation and it benefits us. So some of you, your companies are going to be producing to take advantage of the AFTA agreement because it's a regional conversation. And if AFTA as a bloc decides to do trade or do business with, well, I don't know if that can work, but like a European Union or a United Kingdom or China, then those are regional collaborations, as it were, as it relates to the economy. Then there's global. Global is how the advanced economies are making decisions that affect us. For instance, if they raise their interest rates, and you'll find out what that means, it affects us, and you'll find out why. The last thing is what I call emerging options. And this is my own proprietary definition, where the likes of the World Economic Forum, now they are tracking newer indicators, things like the kind of jobs that will be relevant in future, what is important now, emerging conversations that are macro in nature, and so on and so forth. So once again, these are the fundamentals that I would like you to remember in dealing with macroeconomics. There's the type of economy, advanced versus emerging. There is the institutional tracking, IMF, and so on and so forth. IMF is a good one for global indicators. It's always good to stay consistent. They have a fantastic platform that gives information as it were. Scale and reach, remember there's global, regional, and country, and you will see that shortly, and then emerging World Economic Forum. There are other ones too out there, but World Economic Forum is the one I would like to cite for now.